Yeah.
We could make our own TV show about how we're all
We could announce the world.
sealed inside the Vista Theater.
Yeah. But we could broadcast. We could become like kings.
Right,
People
right,
would watch us.
right, or like Jane Fonda in 3 Mile Island.
We should give everyone it's HTTP QXM lowercase w 74.
Yeah. Yeah, and to our friends in the occupied countries. The wolf runs alone. Little Red Riding Hood is late for grandmother's house.
Let me call Mr. Cohen and see if we need to sit here.
I don't want to sit here. And I love the attention.
See if Liv is enjoying our banter.
I actually think it's probably pretty amusing.
Hey. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, bye. He's checking the buffering on the backup.
The audio buffer?
Oh, is he calling me back? No.
Is it an audio buffer?
How did they do that? Wow.
What?
They got the balloon down. Maybe with static electricity? That was very clever.
It's kind of like Mr. It's kind of like Mr. Wizard.
Yeah. Little magic show right here in front of our eyes.
Yeah, do it again.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's listened to us. We haven't captivated the audience.
No, we certainly have not.
Maybe we can just sit here when the audience loads in and we can keep warm up the room.
They're kind of looking at us.
Yeah. One of those two guys.
Yeah. Jimmy Iovine.
Yeah. We're impersonators.
Yeah. This is an audio check for Matt Cohen to check the redundancy of the buffer feed. The buffer feed redundancy.
Buffer feed redundancy check?
Factor subset 2.
I feel like we should be saying things like that.
Right.
You know,
right.
like the background for, like, there's a space ship's about to take off. And like.
Channel 1's clear. Let's check channel 2. Checking buffer status on channel 2.
Alpha door is sealed. Alpha door is sealed.
Yeah. Copy that, alpha door sealed. There's always one guy that has kind of a alpha door sealed.
Yes, there will be an intro.
Diagnostics, go. Countdown, go. Engine failure, go. I like when you do that. Click, 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 click. Is it just me, or do all these look like Lawrence of Arabia and kind of the Virgin Mary?
If the Virgin Mary was from, well, not Lawrence of Arabia, as he was English.
I understand that, but doesn't it look kind of like a sheik?
It does.
Or like Mary?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Are they all the same, or is it just kind of? I guess they are all identical.
they're all the same.
And being lit from underneath doesn't. It's not very flattering.
No. No, it makes them look rather creepy and dowdy.
A little dowdy, yes. And for some reason, the ones in the back of the room are a little redder. But maybe we can get up there and change a light bulb.
That may have to do with some gels.
Yeah.
How are you going to get home?
Sorry?
How are you going to get home?
How am I going to get home? I don't know.
Boy, I was looking at that.
When I left here the other day, I set Waze. It took me basically surface streets all the way back to the office. And it took an hour. And when I got there, I deliberately drove past, because I was like, fuck, this is taking me forever. Drove past Pac TV to see if Lance was there already, because he left exactly the same time, and he wasn't. So it would have taken him longer. But
well,
it's like...
I took Waze here, and that had me on more side streets.
Right.
And, I'm not...
Right.
I'll get on Western and just go south, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
To the freeway, and then just...
I'm just going to...
Yeah.
I mean, because Western goes all the way down to where I am.
It probably does. Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Just get on Western.
Yeah.
Because the left on Villery, and then to take a right, and then you got to turn around. Yeah. There's too much of that with Waze.
There's a lot of that with Waze, and there's a lot of, like, you turn right, and it says, and now turn left. And you're like, but I'm in this lane, and you know I'm in this lane. You know I'm not in that lane.
Right. Or it puts you on and off freeways.
I mean, it is smart, but it's like, I like to think it's having your mother-in-law in the back seat.
Can we stop talking?
Right. Yeah. I think he was just playing with you. He knew you were listening.
Is Matt mad? Where's that cord? No, the cord.
Okay, cool. We're going to move these chairs.
Okay. Oh, because there's an intro first, right?
Yeah, let's...
Is that my deal?
This is the right-hand mic.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Berman. Thank you. I come to you in episode 3. So just so you know, as you're watching, when it goes July 9th on HBO, and I believe all 4 episodes will be available HBO Now and HBO Go. I'm in episode 3 is where I come into your lives. So it's good to be here tonight, and I want to introduce now to you the engineer, the producer, the innovator, the founder of Interscope, founder of Beats, Jimmy Iovine. Come on down.
Thank you. Hello. Hi, Berman.
Hi, Jimmy. Welcome. I also want to remind everybody to feel free. We're going to talk to Jimmy for about 20 or 25 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions. And questions should be #AskAlmo at Twitter. So feel free to put your questions through. So, Jimmy, thank you very much. This is great to be here and do this with you. I think the first question is, with where you are in your life now, you know, your family, your success, everything that you've achieved, why now to do a piece like this?
Well, you know, that's a simple one. Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. HBO, I was going to do a documentary on Interscope. I thought the 90s was a really interesting time for Interscope, a lot of game-changing things, push culture around, got in a little bit of trouble. And I went to HBO, and Alan simultaneously went with the Dr. Dre documentary. So Alan came up with the idea of the only way to make it work for him, the best idea was my and Dre's relationship. And you got these two guys, both from, you know, modest backgrounds, you know, inner city kind of thing. And I was from Red Hook, Dre was from Compton, and both racially charged neighborhoods. And somehow or another, we kind of found a path, in some ways similar, and met, and then stayed together under some of the most difficult circumstances in the history of entertainment, probably the most difficult circumstances in the history of entertainment. And so what happened was, Alan said to me, I said no originally. I said, why do this, right? And Alan said, call Dre. I said, Dre, you really up for this? He goes, I'm ready to talk. That's all I had to hear. I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. I wanted to see it, you know. So Dre talking is what got me to do it.
That's fantastic. I think you just touched on this a little bit, but you know, you and Dre come from such different roots and you know, different parts of the country, but completely different backgrounds. And can you talk a little bit about how you came together, and more importantly, what keeps you guys together after all these years?
Well, you know, it's funny. I was on a plane with Dre coming back yesterday from New York because we did some of this stuff in New York. And he said, you know, I learned a lot in this documentary when I watched it. I said, really? I said, I learned why we stayed together. You know, and he said, you know, I think you're right, because we just trusted each other. And we trusted each other blindly, and because we produce each other in a lot of ways. I know what he does best, and he knows what I know best, and we both know when the other person wants it more, and we go with them. And we had to really trust each other and believe in each other to, you'll see in another episode that, you know, Time Warner offered Interscope $150 million to get out of death row, and we turned it down. And, you know, it's stuff like that. And by the way, it was in the middle of complete chaos. We turned it down. And I could have used the money at the time, to be honest with you. But anyway, that's what I think.
In episode 1, you said that you had a band in high school to meet cute girls. Seriously, what you did with your life, your career in music, what really led you to music?
Well, I'll tell you a John Lennon story. You know, I was in the studio with John Lennon. I was 20 years old. And matter of fact, at that moment, for some reason, he picked up his guitar and he wanted to tune the guitar. And to tune it, he started singing Norwegian Wood, which was an incredible moment. And so he stopped doing that. He looked at me and he says, "So James, why'd you pick this?" I said, "Well, John, I was terrified. I said, I got to get the right answer." So I said, "John, I did it because I saw you guys on Ed Sullivan and the Stones, and I said I went out and bought a guitar, and I love music, and I tried to get a job at this place, and I can't believe it." He says, "Oh, really?" He goes, "That's cool. That's cool." I said, "John, why did you do this?" He said, "To get laid." I said, "That's why I did it. I wanted to say I had the right answer." But anyway, does that help?
That helps, Jimmy.
Okay.
I love that. The people in and out of your life, pretty fascinating characters, and in the documentary, it starts to touch on it in episode 1, and it really unfolds as the documentary unfolds. But characters like Suge Knight, like David Geffen, Trent Reznor, Doug Morris of the record industry, for all of us who live in the record industry. Who do you keep close, and who's your guiding star in all of this right now?
Well, what I do is I get a feel for someone, and usually the people I get a feel for are really smart. And I stick close to people that are really smart, preferably smarter than me. And I do a lot of listening. And I have a little thing that I do. Sometimes when I disagree, I bet on them. I say, you know what? This person's been right a lot. I'm going to bet on them. And I try it. And if it fails, it fails. But I move it around. I'm like, I produce that, And that's kind of like how I operate, Like I talked to Geffen today, and, I talked to Doug yesterday, and, I talked to my guys that I met along the way that I've connected with,
Yeah, it's incredible when you think of those characters and what they represent in culture, and that you've stayed so close with them, and it only gets stronger. And I've been able to experience that firsthand. I've been very lucky to watch that, because for me, you're my guiding light. So to hear you talk about people like that is pretty incredible. In episode 1, back to episode 1, the line your sister says about growing up and your feet never touching the ground. How important is your family on your journey?
Well, my family was everything, because that's all we had was our family. My dad was a longshoreman, and the work was somewhat consistent. And it was in a pretty rough neighborhood. I wasn't rough, so you got to be funny to survive. And but my dad was incredible. My dad always made me feel, for some reason, I don't know where he got it, that wherever I went, it was like I should be accepted. I should realize that I was cool being there. It was okay. It was good. And I believed him, and it really helped in the rest of my life, because the rest of my life I was terrified. I mean, I had, I said it in the documentary, I think. I went to Interscope. I went to 3 studios, and I got fired twice. And I was just frightened of everything. And I was frightened of what I didn't know, fundamentally, because I had no skills, no talent. And somehow or another, fear, when I felt the console for the first time, and I put the faders up, and I started messing with a record of John Lennon's, fear all of a sudden became exciting to me. And that is really pushed my career. And why Interscope looked the way it does is because I'm attracted to fear. And I can't explain, but that's about it.
That's just living at Interscope for all those years with you, and now with you not being there, it's still something that lives in the hallways of everybody at that company the opportunity that exists because of what you created, because you took that on. And I think it's something that, we try to teach people at that company still, that you can do anything in this business if you face that fear and go through it. And that's something that still sticks with the young people at the company today, something that we really try to push to them.
Because people, what they do is either you're afraid to fail, you're afraid to start, or if you succeed, you're afraid the next thing you do is not going to be as good. So it's all fear. You can't win. So fear is sticking around. So the best thing you could do is try to harness it and use it, because it's more powerful than the force. And the force is the most powerful thing that ever existed.
So one of the things that is so important is understanding the big picture. And, in episode 1, John Landau, tells the story of you and him and Bruce and the importance of the big picture and stick, and the importance of getting it right. Talk about the ethic that Bruce brought to the studio and the relentlessness of Bruce. And it's not just about, getting it done, it's getting it done right. Can you talk about that?
Well, everyone that I've ever seen work in my life, up until when I worked with Bruce Springsteen, John Lennon was very quick in the studio. The Beatles were very quick. They recorded albums very quickly. So John recorded very quickly. Bruce didn't. So I only knew growing up that anybody who had a job, 6 o'clock, 6:01, if you weren't out of there, that means you fell asleep. Well, it fell. So, all of a sudden I see a guy who will not stop under any circumstance, not compromise under any circumstance. He can't be bought, he can't be rented, and he's making this record, and it's going to be his way or it will never come out. So, I learned the work ethic for him because I had to get up for the game, and I saw it work. And all I have to do is see something work once.
Can you talk for a second as the documentary unfolds and you see all these artists that you started with Bruce and with John, and moving into the work you did, with U2, with Stevie Nicks, with Dire Straits, with Petty, and then when it transitioned to the other side, when it became Interscope and your record company and your vision, what was that common theme you looked for in artists and people to work with?
Well, again, it's the same thing I do today, why I'm fighting so hard to get artists paid on streaming tiers, make them concentrate on the paid streaming tier so artists can get paid. Because I went there with nothing. These 3 artists believed in me. It became my college education. I did 6 albums with Bruce Springsteen, Patti Smith, and John Lennon before I was 25 years old. And that was my college education. So I owe them. So I knew that going to Interscope, I always knew which side of the glass was more important. And a lot of times today what you're seeing is that the producer maybe is more important in some cases, but the producer should be there of service. You're trying to serve the overall idea of what that artist is. And if you keep that attitude and don't breathe your own exhaust is as toxic as carbon monoxide. And if you live like that, I believe you can do okay, because nobody wants, that's really unattractive, especially if you're successful and breathing your own exhaust. It's like everybody knows you're full of shit except you.
That's a great one. You said you didn't know anything about rap music, again, as the documentary unfolds. What about Dre and the Chronic stood out to you?
Oh, that was really simple. I didn't know a lot about hip-hop. I came out of rock and roll. And then I heard, I liked Hank Shockley, but a lot of who produced, he produced Public Enemy. But the bottom end of all these records that they were making were very, very muddy to me, and I couldn't get my head around it because I was such a meticulous engineer. And the engineers I used when I was producing were always trying to go for that clear, powerful sound. So they were 808s, they were subwoofers, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to get a hold of it, get my head around it. Dre walked in and played the Chronic, and it reminded me of the uniqueness of a Phil Spector record and the power and discipline of a Pink Floyd record. So I said, okay, whatever this guy's doing, he knows how to do that, and I want to be in business with that. And it worked.
Walking away from Time Warner, $150 million. You referenced that earlier, and as the documentary unfolds and the story becomes clear about the craziness that was going on in that moment, you know, who does that? And did people try and talk you out of it? How did you come to that decision?
Everyone tried to talk me out of it. Of course they did, but
including
you know,
me. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, including you. But if I'm like, in those days, not anymore, but in those days, if I believed something, there was just no stopping. I didn't care what anybody said, you know, and I knew it was all bullshit. Look, I saw John Lennon, because of his lyrics and because of what he was saying about the Vietnam War. I spent an entire album with him going to court between 8 and noon because he was going to get thrown out of the country by Richard Nixon because of what his position against the war. So what did I know? I know it was all bullshit. And the fact that Time Warner had a cable bill and had Bob Dole on our ass and Bill Clinton on our ass, Jerry Levin came to me, the CEO of Time Warner, and said, look, I got to get this cable bill through, and it's in Dole's hands. He said, I've got to sacrifice something. So I went, me, you know, and we got out. But I wasn't going to take any money to get rid of Dr. Dre and Tupac. You have to be out of your mind to do that. But they didn't see that, you know.
You know, of all the stories and all the people whose lives were affected by that decision and that willingness to stand up for, you know, what was so clear to you was right, and to so many other people was, you know, all about the money. And for you, you know, the effect that it had on so many people's lives. And as you reflect back, you know, you personally have lived 5 lives in all that you've done. Do you look back and wonder how, and do you ever have the desire to go back to the studio where it began?
I'd sooner die. Okay? I look at that documentary, I look at my eyes and the way I couldn't imagine it. It was terrifying. I hated it. When I was there, I worked really hard. No, I would never go back to the studio. I don't like having a rearview mirror. I don't like doing anything that I did before again, and I'd rather do nothing. And it's true, I really would. And you know, man, you know, it's like, no, I don't want to run a record company. I don't want to do any of those things ever again. And I'm older now, and you know, I want to help Apple make this Apple Music streaming service of service, and actually help people discover music and become a service that has a heart and heartbeat to it.
Yeah. That deserves applause. For those of us still in the record business, we're very lucky for that, and thank you, Jimmy. What do you want people to see and to take away from this film?
And that's really easy. It's just keep moving. I did this, and why I was so open about it, and Dre was so open about it, is that we're all human, and it's just attitude. A lot of things can be learned. If you have the will and desire, you can even learn talent. That's how strong your will is. And getting over fear. Because I notice, especially today, you know, even with, like, I have 2 daughters and 1 stepdaughter, and they look at Instagram, and everybody's life is amazing. And if they're sitting at home or something like that, or don't get invited to a party that they show their friends are all at that one party and they're not there, they're terrified. They don't want to go out. It's amazing. So that's an added level of fear that I didn't have, right? Oh, you didn't have. But there's a lot of fear in the world, a lot of anxiety. And it's like anything else. If you can conquer it, it's going to come again tomorrow. But if you learn to kick its ass and you harness it and use it, that's the thing you should get out of this this documentary, if you can, because it applies to everyone's life. Not everyone is going to go become Barack Obama or whatever, but you could all live your own lives and it'll all be cooler if you can conquer fear, in my opinion. And that's what this documentary is about. And it's also about something that's very important to me. A white and a black guy became partners and built a gigantic company.
Yeah.
And reason for that is they brought two different cultures together and worked side by side and were equal partners and went ahead and said, okay, we're going to do this together regardless of what anybody else says, no matter what we think, what we hear, we're going to just stick together and we're going to build this company. To think how few companies are built in America by a white and a black guy, or a white and a black woman, or a black man, a white woman. Companies are not built like that. And how unfortunate, because the cultures really blend and they really offer each other something. And, you know, Barack Obama's dream, what was the dream, actually happened to me and Dre. It was realized. We did it. I'm proud of that. And I think that, I hope there's more of that, because there's magic in them there hills.
Yeah, that was... There was a moment, and I remember it very well, as you built Interscope and the force of Interscope, and you started to see the transition in platforms and how people, how culture was coming to people. And I remember sitting with you, and we were sitting with Simon Fuller, the creator of American Idol, and we were at dinner one night, and you asked, what are you going to do now that that you have the open spot on Idol? What are you going to do with that? And Simon looked across the table and said, well, Jimmy, we were thinking about you. And that was your exact reaction. And for someone who had spent your entire career behind the scenes, talk about that decision to move out in front, the why of it, you know.
Well, it's really simple, man. I went on the show to sell headphones. Because you left out the second half of what Simon said. When I said no, he goes, I'll let you sell your headphones on the show. I said yes. Because I was insane about breaking beats. I wanted to pivot. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do hardware. I wanted to do tech, because I realized that the world of tech and music had become one thing. And it wasn't a thing of music waiting for technicians to do something. Music people have to act, and they still have to act, and they still haven't acted, but they should. And so I was so intent on Beats being successful. Thank God it wasn't The Bachelor or something. You know what I mean? At least it was music.
I remember the night after the first episode you were on, where you had Beats headphones on around your neck, your head, your shoulders, your feet, your knees.
Well, as Trent Reznor would say, I am shameless.
Yeah. And you called and you said, "You think that was a little bit too much, Steve?"
It was too much.
No, Jimmy, it was perfect.
It was too much on the first show. And one thing about American Idol, if you want to take photos with middle-aged women in Starbucks, go on American Idol.
Okay, Jimmy, we're now going to. All right, here's why I'm laughing. I was at breakfast with Jimmy and Puffy at the Montage Hotel when we were meeting with him, and this mother and this daughter get off the elevator. This is when Idol was at its height, and this mother and daughter get off the elevator at the same time as we're leaving, and the daughter turns to Puffy and says, "Can I have your autograph?" And the mother turns to Jimmy and says, "Can I have your autograph?" And Jimmy says, "See, I told you guys."
That's it. That explains it all, doesn't it? By the way, who wouldn't rather be Puffy?
Right.
I mean, it's like he's incredible.
So now we're going to move to some questions coming through from the audience. And
It's actually working?
thank you. I got them. I was a little nervous,
Wow,
and they're coming through.
That's incredible. Apple.
Right. I am on my iPhone 7, and it's working perfectly. All right, question number 1. What's the most important component of a successful relationship between you and any artist you've worked with?
The only thing that works is the truth. And a producer's and a record company's obligation is to at least give his opinion of what the truth is. And if both people are lying to themselves or lying to the other person, it doesn't work. So I'm pretty straight ahead with saying, like someone will say, "It isn't the greatest song I ever wrote," and I'll say, "Oh, no, it's not," And we'll argue, and as long as I'm willing to take the pushback and they should be willing to take the truth, that's the balanced relationship. And then you can get somewhere, and some artists do, and some artists can't deal with it, and some record company heads can't deal with it. They want to be, they want to be the chief, and I don't believe in that. I believe in a very open dialogue and argumentative conversations.
The Defiant Ones sheds great light on past and present disruptions in music culture and tech industry. What, in your mind, does the future hold?
Well, the future's, in my opinion, right? This is the lights are on me, but I don't fucking know. But I'm gonna get, I'll give you my opinion. And my opinion is that unless certain things happen, I could promise the recording industry one thing: tech and artists are not going to stay exactly the way they are today. Whereas in the old days, tech used to make something and the record company would benefit. The album, they made albums and CDs. This tech today will eat you. So the labels have to keep up. They're licensing free music, which is a very, very damaging thing to artists. Artists are going to feel that, even though they're promoting themselves on it, and they're going to go and make money elsewhere. And when they make money elsewhere, they're going to spend less time making their albums, and that's going to affect the quality of music. Yeah, a lot of people are listening to music, but they're also spending all day on Snapchat, on Instagram, on Netflix. And if there's better television shows than there is music, guess what? You better get a smaller house.
One of the most important lessons of all the great lessons I've learned from Jimmy is tell the truth and don't be afraid of the truth. So thank you for that, Jimmy. Where did the name Interscope Records come from?
Well, I was making my deal with Ted Field. I wanted to start a label. He wanted to start a label. We decided to put them together. I was negotiating with him, and there was 2 points we were stuck on. I said, Ted, Interscope is a horrible name of a record company. He said, I'll tell you what. If you let me use Interscope, I'll give you the 2 points on that we're talking about. I said, I'm in. So it was a little harder making Interscope cool. So it felt like either a rifle or dental equipment. But we did
it. In your opinion,
the truth is just really weird. That's the God's honest truth. Right. It's just really weird.
But you made it cool, Jimmy. So thank you for that. In your opinion, what decade was the best for the music industry, and why?
Well, that's a complicated question, because are you talking about financially or artistically?
Whoever tweeted the question, can you? No.
You answer it for him. I'll do both. All right?
Okay.
For the industry, the best decade was the 80s because the CD came out, so the 80s living into the 90s. Financially, that was it. But they started their own demise at that moment, because what did they do? They'd go find a band in Poughkeepsie, whatever that word is, and or Atlanta, that had one song. They trap it on the CD. They sell it for $19, and you get one song, and you get screwed. So when Napster came out, every one of those people said, we're getting out of jail and screw these guys. So that was a double-edged sword for them. They didn't behave properly, right? Because they were making a lot more money on CDs. They could have lowered the price of CDs or sold singles or something. Instead, they were PIG, all right? S. And they got in trouble for it because once Napster came out, man, people were like all over it. So musically, I think the transition, even though the Beatles and Motown were the 60s, I would have to say the 70s benefited from that the most musically. And if you go back, it's some extraordinary music. And I'll tell you what, I thought we were lucky. I love the 90s. I don't like a lot of what's going on right now. Everybody's trying to chase a hit, and they're writing the songs in their car, and and it just doesn't. There's not a lot of great stuff. I don't think anybody disagrees with me. There's not like a fountain. It's not. Let's put it this way. This is not the Renaissance.
Right. All right. I remember having a conversation with you when you were talking about the 70s, and I think it was 1971, and the album.
Well, 1971 was one of the, you should go back if you get a chance. One of the greatest. Somebody's doing a documentary on all the albums of 1971. 1971 is just an unbelievable year for music, and you could look through it, and I think you'll have a great time on Apple Music.
Of all the artists you worked with, who surprised you the most?
That's interesting. I mean, a few, but I could say that, I'll tell you, Lady Gaga surprised me off the top of my head because she came in, brown hair, an Italian girl from New York City, just got dropped from her label. Everybody telling me you shouldn't sign it. She just got dropped. And she started talking to me. And she told me about New York, her music, Andy Warhol, and how it all came together through fashion. I was totally confused, and I signed her. Right? So I didn't know what was going to happen. Right? I had no idea. I didn't even know the music. I just signed her because of her. I just said, this girl, something's going to happen. So, I took a shot. And so that was the biggest surprise. How talented she was the biggest surprise. Because she's the real deal.
That's fantastic. How do you and Dre compare as producers?
He's better than I am.
Okay. Next question now.
By a factor of 10,000. What's higher than 10,000? There's not even a comparison. He changed music 3 times. I changed the channel 3 times last night. You know what I'm saying? Not even close.
What do you think about VR and AR's potential for impacting the music industry and the marketing of new music concerts?
I think we're a bit away from VR. I think AR is going to come first, and I think AR is going to be big. I really do. I think AR is going to really be powerful. It's going to be a really effective tool and really used by creative people in a great way.
Yeah, one of the things working with you over the years was how you saw artists attracted to technology and how that turned into art, and how you always kind of had to add, that drive to find those artists. And
well, when I was in the recording studio, because we had, Hendrix recorded there, and John Lennon, and the Rolling Stones, and David Bowie, and Lou Reed recorded there. We would get all the equipment first. So I'd watch the records, the equipment come in, and the records changed. Technology, I'll tell you a story. I'll name drop. I had dinner with Paul McCartney, and he told me a story about when the Beatles first went into the studio with George Martin, and instead of 1 speaker, there was 2. And and George and the guy said, "Why is there two speakers?" And George Martin said, "There's what do you think?" And John said, "Twice as loud," right? And no, but if you listen to Sergeant Pepper, you'll hear the most bizarre panning, and we would get like a digital delay, and all of a sudden, everyone's record, the voice went, "Hello, hello, 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 hello," you know, or phasers or stuff. We would get all that equipment, and we would just plug it in and go. First of all, we were getting high, and sometimes, and you know, you put that with new equipment, and you know, anything could happen. Sometimes.
Did you have a big vision of how you were going to change the industry, or was it more like little changes that added up?
And I didn't change the industry. I was part. You never do anything on your own. I was part of a group of people that just, you know, wanted to move the needle. And where we impacted it the most, I think. Now, I knew nothing about hip hop, but I believe what I'm most proud of about Interscope is that we really leaned in and spread hip hop around the world. No one would spend the money on it, and we opened the bank. We just said, this stuff's going everywhere. Got us in trouble, you know, with the government and stuff, but it was worth it. So Dre, Pac, and Snoop really sent, and I'm not talking about like a Hammer record or something like that, a hip-hop record that crossed. I'm talking about like stuff like that. And they opened the way for a Jay-Z or a Kanye West, and now hip hop is leading music in the whole world. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we just got behind that and did that. And as far as streaming, I think Daniel Ek's done an incredible job, and I think Apple Music is great. And these things have got to take, but not unless the record industry does something about free. Free's easier.
As an innovator, how do you approach making a decision when you see a fork in the road?
I just make the decision and then deal with what happens. It's just that simple. I do. If I go left, I deal with left, and if I go right, I deal with right. Sometimes I can make right better than I wanted to go left, and sometimes left is the wrong decision, and I make right better. It's all fucked up. I make the decision. I don't sit there for hours. I can't take it. Why records are great? Record producers and DJs. The DJs, why they're great is because they get bored faster than you do. So you're dancing, and they're being a DJ, and they're saying, I'm bored of this song, and they change it, and the next thing you know goes, oh, wow, I'm so glad he changed the song. So, you know, I can't wait around to make decisions. I can't have committees. I can't have meetings about it. I just don't want to do it from when I was 18. I just want to go, and let's make a decision, and we'll deal with it. And one way or the other, we'll be right or wrong, or we'll make the best out of what the decision is.
Yeah, one of just to add on that, one of the how you would move at Interscope and make the decision, but also not be afraid to look at the decision and say, hey, wait a second, we moved wrong here. Everybody flip over here. And I remember...
yeah, but so what?
You know.
But that's why you have to make the decision. Otherwise, you're sitting there and somebody passes you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't look left and right. That's why horses have blinders on them. Because the jockey doesn't want them looking like that. If you're looking like that or what everybody else thinks, you're fucked.
But it's also the point that never about ego, never about holding on to something. Sometimes decisions were wrong, and sometimes moving was wrong, and it was okay to turn around and say, no, we got that wrong, go this way, and not get hung up in, I got to hold on for some reason to this, even though it's not working.
That goes back to breathing your own exhaust. You just got to enter it with, you don't have to be humble, but you have to have a speck of humility, you know, and humility is powerful as well. You say, okay, I could be wrong. This person could be right. It doesn't matter as long as in the score, in the end, you have one more point than the other team.
There you go. As fans, we see icons, John Lennon, Tupac, etc., as larger than life. How are they to work with?
Well, they were interesting because they were in some ways similar. They were the most fascinating, glorious people you could want to meet, and also had a part of their personality that went to danger, you know, and pushed the envelope constantly. And I mean, it's unfortunate the two people that he just met died a similar way and had nothing to do with, I don't think it had anything to do with that. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy. But they were both free spirits, not the word. You know, they were both cared about the community. They cared about the world. John cared about the world. Tupac cared about the communities in the United States. These people cared. And if they both had lived, we'd be in a better world.
Well said. Last question, and thank you all. As someone who discovers, nurtures, and works with great artists, what do you think is the definition of greatness?
Well, I mean, that's different for everybody, right? So he's asking me, so I'll answer it for me. Greatness is one thing, is longevity. You know, you could do something really good once, but if you're great, you have to do it more than once. You know, you have to just keep going. And for me, in music, it's lyrics. You know, or production to an extraordinary like Teddy Riley or Pharrell or Dr. Dre or Phil Spector, and but then again, there's Whitney Houston, who had one of the most glorious voices in the history of music. You know, Edith Piaf. But I think it's rare. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Go, man, go. Just say it loud, because I'm an old deaf guy.
In a time when the music industry is defined by selling products to consumers, when we know that the consumer has become a producer and they're no longer just ready to buy someone else's finished art, what do you think is the solution for people to move forward?
Well, it's very hard when, again, it goes back to free music. So what you have right now is you have artists making all their money outside of recorded music. And so what's come in is the kind of sponsors you're talking about are Coca-Cola, right?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm just talking about the fact that we used to sell records to people who don't make records, who for making music is a mystified process. Today, most people make music and buy it, but they don't buy it.
Well, I think maybe in certain areas, but most people, believe it or not, do not make music. And that's who you say. Now, here's the thing. People that do make music are the first buyers and the first listeners and the people that are ahead, But there are tons of look, we're all musicians. You know what? I was a musician. I sucked. That was the only problem. I was a terrible musician. So I became a record producer. But everyone, has a love for music, but to get people to buy it right now, it's so scattered, it's so ubiquitous, it's so free, it's so all over the place. What the industry is having trouble with right now is building global superstars. It's all become so regional. And this is the record label's responsibility, or they are going to disappear.
Jimmy, I know. Thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy, thank you for walking through your fear and creating the Defiant Ones for all of us to be able to share and see and be part of. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you for coming to this, man. Fantastic.
Stream all 4 parts of the Defiant Ones July 9th. Thank you very much.